Hi there. So we're here today to meet with Shannon Norstud, Senior Vice President of Investment with Scottish Development International, and Tony Chow, the Vice President of Business Development. Welcome, guys. So today, let's start just talking about Scottish Development for people who maybe don't know who you are. Can you give a brief overview to the company and its mission?
Sure, happy to, Irene. Thank you for having us here. Scottish Development International is the international trade and investment arm of the Scottish Government. Operationally, we're the International Directorate of Scotland's Economic Development Agency, Scottish Enterprise. Typically, we're co-located around the world in various British consulates and high commissions. Here in Silicon Valley, we have an office in San Jose. Shannon's based in Houston. We also have an office at the Chicago Consulate, as well as the Boston one in the US. I've been with SDI about 4 years, and I'm not Scottish, but I have a very strong cultural affinity to Scotland since I was very young. I can't explain why, but I've always loved bagpipes and drums and tartan, and maybe I'll mention that I did Scottish country dance years before joining SDI. So we are here for the economic impact of Scotland, and part of our work out here is to mobilize the Scottish diaspora. The Global Scot Network, which I'd like to comment, thank you for showing your interest, and now you're part of it, but maybe I should describe it first, which is to be our eyes and ears in the industry, providing thought leadership and just our partners in our quest to help US companies expand and do business in Scotland, as well as help Scottish companies export to the US. But thank you, Irene, for becoming a new Global Scot.
And just like Tony said, Irene, thank you for having us here today. It's a pleasure to be able to talk to yourself and all of your members as well. Just super quick, just a little bit of brief history about myself. I started with the organization back in 2000, which was known as Scottish Trade International. I left for about 3 years to work for a Scottish company in Banchory. And I'd be curious to find out how many of your members have actually been to Banchory, a great little town up in the northeast of Scotland. And as Tony said, I am based in Houston. And over my 15 plus years, I've had the great opportunity to work with just about every team that we have across our organization. And while I started with the energy team way back when, I think my favorite time were those 5 years I spent part of the life science team, and a lot of incredible things going on in the life science world. And I think that's really informed, especially with what we're going through now globally. Some of that background really kind of informs, a lot of my thinking.
So it's really good to know that there are, channels that are set up in place to help Scottish companies grow their business in the US, and also supporting inward investment into Scotland. I can imagine that 20 years ago, it was very challenging to try to create a global business and move across the Atlantic. Everything was very different then. Can you share some of the journey as to what it was like 20 years ago up to now?
Looking back over those 20 years, I think Scotland has changed. And I think that's one of those really great things about Scotland is that, that they're nimble. It is a small country. And they have that ability to pivot and react to the things that are happening in the world. And I think that's what always has been a strength of Scotland is they're worried about what's going on in Scotland, but they endeavor to tackle those big issues that are facing the globe. So I think with that in mind, when you look at those companies from 20 years ago, it was all about Silicon Glen, and it was about, chip manufacturing. It was about big global call centers, 20 years ago when that was a thing. And what's really great now is that you see Scotland again over the last few years pivoting. So it's not just about, chip manufacturing. And in fact, they do very little of that now. And it's all about, AI or machine learning or data or the newest things around quantum computing or cybersecurity. That's what's really cool. And that's what attracts, whether it's California companies or Ontario companies, that's what's attracting, that's Ontario, Ontario, Canada, not Ontario, California, that's attracting those companies to look at Scotland. I think where I started in that oil and gas industry 20 years ago, and now it's all about hydrogen. It's all about carbon capture, utilization and storage. It's about offshore wind. It's about how can we innovate in Scotland to help the greater good. And I'll link it all back to the healthcare sector. What can we do in that space right now, in 2021 to make an impact, for the world, whether that's around COVID or around cancer, areas where Scotland is really endeavoring to push forward and support, again, not just the folks of Scotland, but that global economy.
It's incredible, really, if you think about how Scotland has been able to morph through the years to change its industry and to remain cutting edge and being very innovative on the global platform. Can you maybe highlight some examples as to how SDI has supported that next wave of innovation in Scotland?
Firstly, I'm glad that Shannon's able to talk the past 20 years being here, seeing. And you talked about the years. I was thinking 200 years, Scottish innovation. Of course, the legacy of an industrial powerhouse and manufacturing. A couple of things to highlight now is the pivot from manufacturing legacy to a digital economy. And I'll start by talking about the intersection of the physical and data world for advanced manufacturing. There's a new innovation center hub called the National Manufacturing Institute of Scotland, which itself is within a larger zone called the Advanced Manufacturing Innovation District in Glasgow. It's attached to the University of Strathclyde. And very exciting things are happening there. It's brand new. Now moving to stuff we cannot see for data analytics and cloud-based solutions, we have in Edinburgh a data-driven innovation program. It's about $1 billion US that the Scottish government's putting for Scotland to aspire to become the data capital of Europe.
Wow.
I work closely with my partners over there and I enjoy introduce my clients there. So I think of myself as tying the Silicon Valley innovation system with the tech ecosystem of Scotland. So it's always a pleasure, a delight to see clients from Silicon Valley visit the Bay Center, which is this innovation hub for data science and AI, that you could see how industry, public sector, and academia could collaborate. There's many great features inside, but one of them I'll highlight alongside, is the Edinburgh International Data Facility, which focuses on high performance computing. And this is powered by Hewlett-Packard Enterprises.
It's incredible, the wealth of investment. You mentioned, $1 billion data industry. Where does the investment come from to make all of these great expansions and innovations happen? I mean, how does the investment side of your business work to support that?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think Tony just highlighted on some of those partnerships from academia to us as the government to industry. I think it's that triangle of engagement is what enables those things to happen, and so kind of the underpinning for that for us, the Scottish government. In October of last year, they announced their first ever inward investment plan. And that inward investment plan it actually was meant to be released at the beginning of 2020. And then COVID happened. and they actually held the release and went back in and looked to understand what was happening to that global economy, and rework a lot of areas of that to take those things into account. So that plan was released in October, and what it does for Scotland and I think this again is one of those really innovative things, is that Scotland, the Scottish government says around investment, it's not about being good at all things, because the truth is we're not. No place is. It's about picking those areas that Scotland really has that competitive advantage. We've got that talent. We have the natural attributes, whether through the land or resources, whatever that might be. And so they've come up with 9 areas that they deem this is our area of focus. This is where Scotland can make an impact, on the world. And those areas are so decarbonization of transport, energy transition, health tech, food and drink innovation, digitalization of business services, digital financial services, software and IT, and then ultimately transformation of the chemicals industry. And with those focuses, we're seeing investment come from, maybe it's coming from Winnipeg. We do have we have big investors from Winnipeg that are focused on kind of that decarbonization of transport. You've got companies from obviously the Bay Area, a lot of companies from the Bay Area that are focused on that software and IT piece. You have companies coming out of Houston, that are looking at that energy transition. And then ultimately over on the East Coast, we have, Scotland. Scotland is well known as kind of that second location behind London as a financial services capital, whether it's, BNY Mellon or JP Morgan. We're seeing investment come from, more generally across North America, endeavoring to focus on those 9 key areas.
It is so good to hear your reach across North America and other places around the world. What does make Scotland different to other countries in the world in terms of how it conducts itself when it's doing business?
Summarized by talking about the values. We have a very values-driven investment. What we're measured against is inclusive growth. And out here, we're here to, when U.S. companies expand, we are measured by providing new, good, green, and good jobs above the living wage. We're very keenly concerned about the digital divide, especially I think during the pandemic, we're seeing it here in the States. Make sure that there's a sense of equity across the country, across all regions. SDI, we talk a lot about the Central Belt, but we focus a lot also on the more remote areas, the beautiful areas that people want to visit, that people want to live in too. And so we'll provide economic opportunities out there. So related to that's the quality of life. We could code in Edinburgh and unplug in the Highlands. Sustainability, as Shannon referenced, with the natural attributes. And finally, I mentioned the work ethic. You'll have, it's kind of world renowned, the Scottish work ethic, which I believe is underpinning actually American work ethic. But with that is the independence of work and the collaborative nature.
That's a great overview, and certainly, this quality of life that you talk about, coding in Edinburgh, living, hanging out, relaxing in the Highlands sounds really nice quality of life, specifically if you can control the weather there. What do you think are maybe some of the biggest key priorities for Scotland over the next 3 years?
Yeah, and I think as Tony touched on, it's those values, and I think values-based economic development. That's a new concept on the world stage. That that ESG, that focus on ESG, that's something that you're not hearing other countries talk about yet. We're starting to, and I'm happy to say that Scotland, was the first one that I'm aware of, to kind of get that messaging out there. So to build on what Tony was saying, picking on that net zero part, we have COP26 taking place in Glasgow here in the early part of November. That's critical. So as one of those priorities, that Scotland wanting to contribute to solve a global problem. That's a priority for us. Again, it's not about just, yes, we do create jobs, we do create, quality of life in Scotland, but even beyond that, it really is about making the world a better place. That is absolutely one of those priorities. So as part of that COP26, it's introducing hydrogen. How do we share our knowledge, our innovation around hydrogen? And even here, in Houston, we see a lot of work taking place in California. We see a lot of this taking place up in Alberta, where companies over here are looking to Scotland to understand, in that hydrogen space, how can they also contribute to be a part of that change? And that's totally inspiring. Coming back to the COVID aspect of things, obviously one of our big priorities is the recovery, the economic recovery, that comes on the backside of that. And you asked about, how are U.S. companies supporting that? We had a number of investments over the past year where companies were looking to, whether it was manufacturing test kits, to undertaking research, in Scotland. That's some of the stuff that we were seeing just all in the last 12 months. And I think that's going to continue to be a big part of that recovery going forward.
Mm-hmm. And I can tell that these are very, some are very exciting. Some are just incredibly important initiatives that the world needs to have. How does SDI leverage the diaspora to improve its outcomes for its clients and both its customers?
That's the best question, I suppose. And I think it starts with us here today. It's about you having us, and it's about giving us that opportunity to connect with your members. And at the end of this, I know that we'll be able to share our contact details. We would like to connect with you, whether it's Tony or myself. Depends on how many folks reach out. We do have a team behind us, so we might ultimately have you connect with another one of our colleagues. But I think for us, it's about being that eyes and ears for us in the marketplace. As an America's team, we have about 40 folks spread across our 6 offices here in North America. And that might sound like a lot, 40. It's not when you consider the thousands of miles of differences between the various coasts. So it's asking members, your members, to kind of be those eyes and ears. Are they seeing any insights or making any connections that they feel would be beneficial for Scotland? We'd love to hear about them. We'd love to know about them. And some of the diaspora that's out there, many of them will just send me a link to a news article, and I know what it means. That's all. They don't even have to write an email. They just send me that news article, and I'll be able to figure out the direction they're pointing me in. But beyond that, we do actually have a number of programs that are out there that, again, if your members feel like they can help, we would love to hear from them. One of those programs is called Entrepreneurial Scotland. In Entrepreneurial Scotland, their main focus out here in North America is around facilitating Scottish interns to be placed within organizations based out here. They've been out here for a number of years. Obviously, the last year and this year, they've been virtual internships because of where we're at. But that would be a great program to get the diaspora organized around Entrepreneurial Scotland. Additionally, Tony touched on it a moment ago, and Irene, again, thank you for being a part of the Global Scot program. The Global Scot program, again, is more of that business focus. It is being those eyes and ears for us out in the marketplace. It's looking for those trends. It's looking for those contacts. It's helping Scottish companies when they come to the market. It's helping us on the investment side to see a new link around quantum computing that maybe we haven't seen yet. Right. Additionally, if your members are part of an alumni group, there's alumni groups in every single city in North America. That's a lot, or just about every single city. And we're connected to a lot of them. But if we're not connected to the one that you're a part of in your town, we would love to come down and at y'all's next gathering, and maybe in whenever that is, in a little bit later date here with COVID, but we'd love to have somebody come down and tell you a little bit more about what we're doing, very specific to your market, to your areas of interest. And then finally, one of the really cool things that the Scottish government is looking to do is they're looking to create a trade envoy. And obviously California is such an economic powerhouse globally. California is definitely one of those areas where, a trade envoy is, again, it's that person that can open doors, whether that's at a policy level or at an economic development level. It's somebody that's very well connected, and we are interested in folks that are connected to that VC ecosystem. That's a hard industry for us to crack. We are connected, but we always could use more help. So you might be interested in something of that nature,
Sure.
or you might know somebody, or just like to learn more. Again, would love to connect with you. Myself or Tony or any one of our team would love to connect with you.
Yeah, that sounds great. And if I was a business, and I'm looking to expand, and either I'm a business in Scotland looking to come out to America, or I'm maybe an American business looking to expand into Scotland and the UK, how would I start that journey?
Very easy. Just on our website is an inquiry page. We have a very responsive team, and we'll feed you to the appropriate field offices. And of course, Shannon mentioned, we're here. We're very happy to connect with your members. And I have to say, I'm heartened to hear what was just described about this people being the eyes and ears. I think of this Team Scotland growing, and we welcome all that joining us, joining the Scottish Affairs Office in DC, and visit Scotland and all the universities. It's a great team to be part of.
As I start to wrap this up, maybe I can ask you guys, what is one of the most unique things in your career that has stood out to you about Scotland, its culture and its people?
I think connecting culture and business I found very interesting and relatable. Is the sense of modesty. I think is generally seen as arrogance, could be seen maybe one of the worst human traits out there. But Scotland's is on the other side of this. The modesty is interesting. I've often heard it said that you don't want to puff up yourself too much in a crowd, partly because you're being knocked down. I think that's part of the cultural upbringing, but it gives that sense of, fairness, and how people really want to work together. And I think that is expressed well in that there is not this wide income gap that we see here in Scotland. And folks who want to look for new jobs, they don't necessarily go just because they're paying me gobs of money. They want to stay with whoever offers the most interesting challenge. They just want to work at it. So I find that very refreshing. And it's also related to that, comparing to the States, is I feel that it's a States 50 years ago, in which there's a social contract between employee and employer of loyalty. That it's frequent people just stay with their employer for decades. Within Scottish Enterprise, I'm one of the young ones, 4 years in. Many are 2 decades, like Shannon, 3 decades. And I think that speaks well to both, just the culture.
I think even from my perspective, one of the things that, culturally, Scots are everywhere in the world, and they're not afraid to go anywhere in the world. And I think that's great. I've often heard folks say that if all the Scots came home to Scotland, it would be a really crowded place. So it's a good thing that they're so far, in all 4 corners of the world. And it's that, I think it's that willingness, from my perspective, because again, I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of Scottish companies over the years. I've helped Scottish companies break into the Houston market. I've helped Scottish companies break into the Rio de Janeiro market. Yeah. And there's a bit of a fearlessness at times. And that's really exciting to say that they will tackle some of the biggest challenges out there. And again, I harken back to my time on looking at life sciences, whether it's stem cells or cancer or now COVID, there's just this appetite to say, get in there. I think that's a phrase, get in there. and then just get after it and see what you can do and just do your best. And that's really cool.
Maybe a perception that maybe Scots are not afraid to fail, to keep trying.
And that's a big thing that we use. Don't, fail fast, succeed fast.
It's so good to hear about all the cool stuff that you guys are doing. Where in Scotland is your favorite place to visit and why?
Well, I feel I still have so many places in Scotland to visit, but when I think about what part of my travels are interesting for, I love history. So I mean, you could say anywhere in Scotland, but for cities, I love visiting Edinburgh and St Andrews for that reason. Enjoyed being lost in the Highlands or Cairngorms, just the natural beauty, the stark beauty of it. One event, I was at Islay at the Lefroy Distillery. I held up my little deed of those square foot of land that they give you being in front of Lefroy. And my wife told me later that's the happiest she's ever seen me. Just that a selfie I took with my little deed on Lefroy.
For myself, I always think of Iona. In particular, and the Isle of Staffa, just on Iona, the history, and what that little small area represents it, to the greater religious aspect of all things. And then you look at Staffa, which is just a little short boat ride, they're just right near each other, but it always makes me smile, the storytelling aspect of, Fingal's Cave, the giants, and, the connection back over to Northern Ireland and everything. That every time I think of that place, it puts a smile on my face and makes me want to go back. So I think it's been about 3 years ago since I was in that location. Obviously we haven't been back since COVID, but I'll definitely be revisiting Iona and Staffa again.
That's so great to hear both of your stories there. So in wrap up, what parting thoughts and comments do you guys have for our audience?
We'd love to hear from you. I think that's the key thing. I think, as you said, Irene, that call to action for the diaspora, this is it. This is it. The fact that, if your members have watched all the way to this point, please reach out to us, and we'd love to explore, because I think that's the unique thing. Every engagement, every relationship is all unique, and we're keen to start it with you.
That's great. Well, thank you both very much. This has been very educational and enlightening for us. Shannon Norstad and Tony Chow, thank you.
Thank you.